Well, thank you for watching this video. This is something new that I'm trying with several different teams. It's a quick way to get stuff out there by putting it on YouTube and letting people watch it, uh, you know, on their computers or their phones or whatever they need to do. So we thought this might be a kind of a neat way to get some stuff out. And so thank you for taking time. Might take a few minutes, so take some notes and just kind of pay attention with it, okay? So thank you for being part of our new change team. This is brand new for our church, and I am really, really excited about this team. We have done visitation in the past, which is basically following up with new people as they have come to our church. But we're going to get a little bit more organized with this and giving more people an opportunity to serve in this capacity and to make a difference. So we're just going to go through a little bit talking about the change team. And again, thank you for being part of it, for being open, for caring about first, second time guests, regular attenders. I think that's phenomenal. So let's go ahead and begin. Get out a piece of paper, a notepad, and let's take some notes. And again, in advance, thank you so much for being willing to be part of this team. I just think that's absolutely wonderful. Okay, who likes change? Well, not a lot of people. Not very many people are a fan of change. They are absolutely comfortable with where they are, how things are, the way that they were, and they're really not super interested in seeing that become different. But the reality is, some people need change. So there are people that are living in this world a certain way and they need help, but they don't know they need help. And and they're not going to like change when they are first introduced about change, or they are or something is mentioned to them about change. It's not their cup of tea, but they would be so much better if there was a change in their life. So you notice my little buddy over here to the side, Mr. Caterpillar here. Ask the caterpillar if he likes change. He only knows one way of living until the chrysalis comes. That's a big word, but that's when the cocoon happens. All he knows is kind of hanging out on a leaf, munching that leaf, inching along. He likes inching along. It's okay to be a caterpillar. There's nothing wrong with being a caterpillar. I've always been a caterpillar, and I will always be a caterpillar. Well, no. God has something more for Mr. Caterpillar that he may not even be aware of. He has no idea that he's going to be living different after the chrysalis. So you can see here that when the caterpillar goes into his cocoon, he comes out different. And really, it's kind of a weird, creepy little bug kind of guy. But when he comes out, he is a butterfly, and he's been changed. Looks different. He lives different. At one time he just hung out on the leaf, but now he's flying. He's in the air, and little kids were afraid of him before the chrysalis, but now they love him and they love butterflies. But God intended the caterpillar to change, and I love using the caterpillar as an illustration that God can change people, that He can make them into new people. The reality is, God has something for everyone. The Bible teaches us that sin robs us from a real relationship with God, for all of sin fall short of the glory of God. That sin causes us shame, guilt, and confusion. Obviously, there's separation from God. There is no communion. There is no relationship with God. And sadly, it causes spiritual death. If a person dies within their sin, uh, they wake up in a place called hell, and that's absolutely awful. This is a life without God. Shame, guilt, confusion, separation, spiritual death. It's not good. But this is not God's will. The Bible actually teaches us that He wishes no man to perish, and that's from 2 Peter 3:9. And we know John 3:16, for God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, gave His Son so that we might not perish but have everlasting life. Jesus is sent to bridge this gap between us and God. And there's a big divide between us and God. But when Jesus, who is God in flesh, he came, he died, he rose again so we could be restored and forgiven and have peace. And now he gives people a chance to respond. Romans 10:13 says, "For whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved." Now, this is what we call the gospel. It is the message that Jesus came, died, rose again, and that he wants to save us. And it's a wonderful message that anyone who calls in the name of the Lord will be saved. Now, what's interesting is that that message is intended to come through the church. Ephesians 3:10 says this. So this is so God's multifaceted wisdom, this gospel, this message of Jesus, that it may be known, that it may now be made known through what? The church. God's intent for the message of the gospel for people to be saved is supposed to come through the church. The five purposes of the church: worship, fellowship, disciple, ministry, evangelism. Evangelism means sharing good news. So never forget that one of the church's core purposes is to tell people about Jesus. And by the way, the church is not just an organization, it's an organism. Don't forget that we are the church. We are the ones that are supposed to be telling people the good news. So we've created this thing called the Change Team. And the Change Team is going to help with this. Now, the Change Team has got to start off by remembering our church's vision statement: connecting, caring, and changing. You hear about that a lot. But let's just review that really quick and remember what it means to be a connecting, caring, and changing type church. Being a connecting church means that we're connecting people to Jesus. We want them to experience worship and fellowship, two of the purposes of the local church. We want to be a church that cares for people. So we have discipleship, ministry, life groups, and helping people. But then also changing the world through missions. Man, that's a big one. And this is so important in our church. We support mission work through giving. We're going on mission trips. But we want to be a changing type church that is creating a positive change in the name of Jesus. And this change team is going to help do that. This team will be a very important piece in our overall evangelism strategy. We have to have a strategy for evangelism. It just doesn't happen. A church has to be ready and intentional about winning people to Jesus. This team will help close the back door. What happens, we'll oftentimes get people in church and they'll come and the front door is really, really open, but the back door is really, really open. What does that mean? That they come, but no one's never connected to them, so they don't come back. This change team is going to help solve that problem. They will personally connect with people. Now, did you catch that? Personally connect with people. Not just an email or a letter, but personally connect with people. And this is a big part of the change team. And they're going to help move people to Class 101. They're going to try to help get them from being just a guest and just being there at the church to actually getting to know them and getting them plugged in to Class 101. Speaking of Class 101, do you remember this from Class 101? I hope you do. It's a little diagram that we show in all of our classes. If you look behind the colors there, you see people in a crowd. There's a lady over there on the left, a little boy on the right, a sea of people. But this is how people naturally get involved in church and make that next step. Now, notice the outer rim, which is the community or unchurched, and occasional drop-ins, okay? Normally, they'll start coming to church, and they'll get involved. They'll jump in that next loop into the regular attenders and crowd. So somebody somewhere, the outreach team hung something on their door, somebody handed them an invite card, they came to church, whatever, and they jumped into that, and they came occasionally, and then hopefully they're in that regular attenders circle. Now, here's where the change team comes in. We want to help them not just become occasional church members or church attenders, but regular attenders and part of that crowd. Because if we can get them to come regularly, we can hopefully, Lord willing, get them to one-on-one. Now, most importantly, and you're going to hear this a little bit later, the goal is not just church attendance, it's a personal relationship with Jesus, because you can go to church and still miss Jesus and not be saved. But we're going to get to that in a second. But understand that this team is going to help make people jump from that outer realm of the unchurched and the occasional and the community into the regular attenders, and hopefully from there they will become part of the congregation and a member through 101, and then in 201 maturing members, and then from there in 301 they'll start ministering, and then hopefully in 401 they'll do what you're doing. They'll go back into the crowd or into the community and the unchurched and try to bring them in. So the goal of this team is this. The change team will identify first and second time guests and will personally connect to them through either visitation, a phone call, or a letter on Monday nights. Now that's the definition of your team: to identify first and second time guests and personally connect them through either visitation, a phone call, or a letter on Monday nights. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. Oh, well, before that, let's talk about what happens when you do this, okay? People will know they are cared for by LCC. We want to be a growing church. There's no bones about it. We must never stop growing. We must never stop reaching people. But we also have to remember that people are more than a number, okay? It's more than just a count that we do on Sunday mornings. They are a real person that needs Jesus. And people will be encouraged by this team, the change team. It's going to encourage them to begin the class system of 101 and 201, 301, 401. And remember, 101 presents the gospel. We've had a lot of people accept Jesus in class 101. So remember the great power of that. And also, we will be faithful. We will be faithful to the Great Commission, where we go and make disciples. And we're trying by being part of this team. Now, let's talk about how the change team will work. Okay? A little bit different than what we're used to, but let's give it a shot here. Okay, take some notes. Are you ready? Change teams will be divided into teams of 4. Okay, now Team A, Team B, Team C, Team D. Now that corresponds with a normal 4 week a month schedule. Now there's some months with 5, so ideally there might be a Team A, Team B, Team C, Team D, and then Team A may go again, or Team B may go again. The idea here is that your team will do this once a month. So when it's your time to go, once a month during that time. So this is not a Monday night forever commitment, but if you want to come every Monday night, praise the Lord, absolutely do this. But we're asking you just to be part of a team that is coming one Monday night a month. So it's not a big commitment, but an important commitment. When you come as a team, the team will meet at the ministry center at 6:30 or earlier. Your team may want to meet earlier, and that's great if they do. That's awesome. When they come to the ministry center, now this is important because you're going to get your information not sent to you prior. It's going to be waiting for you at the ministry center on the counter in the ministry center when you come, okay? So you're going to show up at 6:30 or 6 o'clock whenever your team decides, and you're going to get your information that's going to be prepared for you by our administrative assistant. So you're going to come, you're going to pick it up, and you're going to get your assignment for the night and what you're supposed to do. At that point, the team will identify, of the 4 people that are there, who will be visiting, who will be making a phone call, who will be making phone calls, who will be making phone calls that night. Some contact is better than none. So let me just say this. Some of you all are going to go out visiting. Some of you are going to make phone calls. And if they're not there, if you go and visit or whatnot, you're going to maybe call them again. So if you go and visit and they're not home, you're going to still follow up later that night with a phone call after you drop that off. So we'll talk more about that in a second. But you're going to get there. So 4 people is going to show up at 6:30 at the ministry center, and you're going to say, okay, half of us are going to go out visiting, the other half's going to make phone calls, whatever, okay? So at that point, the team will have prayer. Now, this is very, very important. You're going to pray together, okay? You're going to pray and ask God to do a great work and to bless this. Then the team will disperse. So some are going to stay here at the ministry center and maybe call some folks. The others are going to go and visit first time guests. Um, the second time guest will probably get phone calls, and the first time guest will get a gift dropped to them. So ideally, if a first time guest comes, they're going to be visited. So if they're a second time guest, they don't need to be visited again. So that's where the phone call is going to come in. So you're going to figure out who's going to do what. Now, if you go and you go and drop something off and they're not there, you're going to make a phone call later that night and let them know that you dropped something off and that you were there for them. But you're going to meet at the ministry center, figure out what you're going to do, and you're going to disperse. And when you're done, you're going to go home. You don't need to meet again. Okay? All right, so when you're at the ministry center, okay, there's going to be one group that's out visiting, another group that's writing cards and making phone calls. Okay? That's the group that stays at the ministry center. All right? So those getting cards are going to be first-time guests. Those getting visits are going to be first-time guests. Those getting phone calls are going to be second-time guests and first-time guests that weren't there when you dropped off the material. Sound confusing yet? Okay, you'll do okay. It'll all be spelled out. But when you write a card, understand that we're going to have some thank you notes here at the ministry center waiting for you. So you just show up and write those notes. And a handwritten note is always the best. So we're going to ask you to handwrite the note and sign your name. At that note. All right. So here's what maybe a sample note looks like. Just wanted to write you a note and say thank you for visiting Life Community Church. We hope you come back next week. I will be praying for you this week. You put your name, and then in parentheses put you're a member at LCC. Now that's not too hard, is it? You just take a little thank you note out, write that. I'll be praying for you. Glad to have you, and you send that out. Okay, not too hard, and we'll mail that for you, and it'll be just fine. Now, when you're making a phone call, so this is primarily a second-time guest or a first-time guest that wasn't home when you visited them. Here's kind of some tips for making that phone call. Familiarize yourself with the name before calling. You don't want to call somebody and say, wait a minute, let me look, is Bob there? Okay, now you need to know that you're calling Bob before you call Bob. If the person is a minor, ask for their parents. If you have a 10-year-old that filled out a card, don't call the 10-year-old and talk to the 10-year-old. That's kind of creepy. Likewise, if you're making a visit, you're going to ask for their parents. You're going to ask if the parents of Jimmy is home or Bob home, one or the other. If they don't answer, which is more than likely very possible because a lot of people don't answer foreign numbers, leave a message, okay? And the purpose of this call is to thank them for coming, okay? Second time guests, first time guests, thank you for coming. Here's a sample little voicemail message you can leave. Hi, this is Kenny. I'm part of Life Community Church, and I just wanted to reach out to you and let you know how thankful we were to have you at LCC and personally invite you back next week. I hope you have a great week. If you need anything, feel free to call back. Not too hard. If they answer, have a good conversation with them. Say, hi, is Bob there? Yeah, this is Bob. Okay, Bob, my name is Kenny. I'm part of Life Community Church, and I just wanted to thank you for coming, invite you back, and answer any questions you may have. And Bob may have some questions, and you may want to ask him if you can pray for him or if there's anything he needs prayer for, and just go from there. See how the conversation goes. Now, if it's a minor, if you're calling a minor, you don't ask for the minor. You ask for the minor's parents. Hi, are Bob's parents there? Hi, Mr. Bob's dad. My name is Kenny from Life Community Church, and I wanted to thank you for allowing Bob to go to church on Sunday. We would love to have Bob back and would love to invite you and your family too. And if you're visiting minor Bob, you're going to knock on the door and not ask for Bob. You're going to ask for Bob's parents. Okay, so remember that. That's important. You don't want to creep anybody out. Now let's talk about making that visit. Now here's what I want to just grind in your brain, okay? Visits really work, even if you doubt it. Um, do not believe the myth that people don't like to be visited. We have a couple in our church right now that when they were visited, they posted on Facebook how touched they were. And that led to them being baptized and actively serving in our church. Um, we are conditioned to think that nobody wants a personal visit. Tom Rainer just released research that hanging something on somebody's door is not effective, but actually knocking on the door, and I'm talking about a cold call visit, somebody that has absolutely no exposure to church, to your church, none whatsoever, that if you knock on that door, give them an invite, personally talk to them, that has a high retention rate. So it is absolutely a lie from the devil that people do not like to be visited. That's not true. And it makes complete sense because we need personal contact. Jesus wants us to have personal contact. So remember, you are the light of the world. So when you personally contact somebody, you are shining the light of Jesus. Now, some people won't like it, okay? Not everybody likes it, but that's okay. But you got to remember, too, that if you're making a visit, these are people that's already come to the church, so they have shown some sort of interest, okay? That's a good thing, all right? And the purpose of the visit is to deliver a gift packet and thank the person for coming. That's the purpose. Now, here's some tips. Always two people, all right? One is not enough. Three is too many. One is a creepy type vibe. Three is way too much. It feels like they're being bombarded. Two is the magic number. And remember, Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2. So if you only have 3 show up that night for Change Team, 2 goes visiting, 1 writes notes. If you only have 2 people show up, I would prefer for you to go and visit, and then maybe notes and cards take second priority. Don't expect to go inside the house unless invited. You are not trying to get into the house. You're not knocking on the door and then walking in, okay? If you're invited, go. It could lead to a great opportunity. Maybe they could accept Christ. But stand on that front porch. You're not trying to get into the house. And try to get the visit in before nighttime. When nighttime comes, especially in the wintertime, people start putting on their pajamas. They start getting settled in. And that's difficult because it can start getting dark at 5 o'clock. So great time in summertime. It's later is greater, so it's great. The sun's not going down till later, and that's wonderful. Remember, don't force it. The visit can be short, and that's okay. If it only takes a minute, it only takes a minute, and that's all right. But when you do go, be nice. Just say, hey, thanks for coming. Assess the situation. If they're right in the middle of supper, say, hey, we're not here to bother you, but offer to pray for them. Is there anything we can pray for you about? And if they say yes, take a moment to have prayer with them right there on the porch. They may really appreciate it. And be prepared to share Jesus. Remember, change only happens when the message of Christ is delivered. Okay? Pray for God to give you an opportunity to tell them about Jesus. You're doing this to help them know Christ. Always invite them back to church. But remember, inviting them to Jesus is always better than church. Now, if you're a little nervous about sharing your faith, you need to go to class 401. It talks about how to share your faith. It talks about the receptivity of people and what to do when folks are open to Jesus or maybe closed to Jesus. So you need to be, you need to pull out your 401 book if you've already done 401 and reference some of that stuff. But remember, the goal is to thank them, have prayer with them, but if the opportunity arises, give them Jesus because that's the most important thing. Here's some closing thoughts. The first Monday night of each month is our monthly First Monday Night prayer service. It is critical you are part of the prayer service. The prayer service is absolutely a driving factor behind this church, and we need the Holy Spirit to do this. So if you're on Team A the first week of the month, you will need to meet on a different night than Monday night. We want you to visit, but we want you to go to prayer service, okay? We don't want you to go out visiting during prayer service. We want you to come to prayer service because we believe that calling on the name of the Lord is so important. And by the way, That's how hard soil is tilled. It comes through prayer. So you may need to go on a different night of the week if you're on Team A. And don't forget to meet at the ministry center. This is how you're going to get your information. It's how you're going to figure out who needs to be visited that night. So, and it's also a team effort. We're getting more people involved. We want it to be a team, collective effort. So we're doing this as a church. Remember, it's God's will that evangelism comes to the church. We talked about that earlier. And always be familiar with the next 101 class, because remember our little diagram. We want them to be part of the class system. You want them to become a regular attender, and then that they will be part of the 101 class. And remember to have fun with it. I think some of the best times is when you're driving with somebody, you're loving it. You know, you can get involved with somebody, connected with somebody. That's a good thing. Now, remember, God is going to bless you for doing this. Hands down. You will fulfill your life mission. You will contribute to the growth of the church, and you will learn. And you know, what if that caterpillar over there has been coming to Life Community Church, gets a visit from a butterfly, makes that decision to become a chrysalis, and becomes a butterfly? Okay, that's a cheesy illustration. But what if that person that's been coming doesn't know Christ? You go to them, and they give their life to Jesus because of the personal connection. What if you led somebody to Christ on a doorstep? This is what the Change team is all about. So thank you for being part of that team. Thank you for being part of a church that is connecting, caring, and changing. So as the Change team begins, go back over this little presentation, look at the notes. We'll get our administrative assistant to send you a copy, a transcript of this, or at least the notes of it, so you can reference this. And we'll have the Team A, Team B, Team C, Team D assigned to everybody and how that's going to work. We may even put that in the program so you can know when your team is going to be meeting each week. So thank you so much for being part of this team. I know God is going to bless it, and I know He's going to do a great work. So thank you very, very much for being part of the Change team.